for agreeing to chat to us today.
Totally. Thanks for having me.
So, mate, tell us a little bit about CRABS. Where did this idea start off for you? Because I had so much fun watching this film.
Oh, that's awesome. Cool. Yeah, like every decision that was made in the production of it, like the one thing that I wanted to make sure of was that we always aimed at fun. Like that was the goal the whole time. So I appreciate that. But yeah, the origin of the idea was really just growing up and seeing horseshoe crabs on the beach and thinking they were terrifying. And then I assumed that at some point somebody would make a horseshoe crab horror movie, and then nobody did. And when I started writing the horseshoe crab horror movie, I realized that I also really want to make a teen romance comedy, and I also really want to make a giant monster movie. And then it was really just trying to be like, okay, if I have the chance to make one movie, how do I tie all the different movies I want to make into a coherent, cohesive story?
So how did you go about doing that? Was there a lot of writing, rewriting, trialing, and workshopping to get that script absolutely right?
Yeah. So the original script I wrote when I was about 19 years old and had no intention of ever showing it to anybody or making it or anything like that. And then I got into a position where I met some producers, and it felt like the right time to raise money for my first feature. And we actually started raising money in a completely different movie. And as we got closer to shooting that, I realized I'm like, okay, I actually, if I'm going to be spending 3+ years on a project, I really want to make this crab movie. I would much rather have that be my first film than something else in order to then later try to get the crab movie made. And yeah, so we started production, and then as indie films go, basically everything that can go wrong does go wrong. So during the first week of pre-production, we had to entirely scrap whole characters and then combine characters into one character. And then, we had the barn location that's in the film was supposed to be suburbia, and then we lost the house in suburbia, and it was supposed to take place partially at a train station. So anyway, there was a lot of rewriting when things, given whatever the circumstance was, we had to rewrite for whatever was happening. And so we were rewriting every day. I mean, every single day during production, there was something that needed to change, or a line that needed to change because of something that happened that day, or a great line of improv that then made us need to change some other line over here. And so the script was always evolving.
As a writer myself, I find that really fascinating. Tell us a little bit about what that was like, having to scrap characters, drop characters, and combine characters, because that sounds almost like a writer's nightmare in a sense.
Yeah. It was hard. It was really hard, especially because the pressure of production was there. So that we had a hard, fast start date when all the crew and the cast were arriving, and it was actually during casting too. I wrote a scene or a character specifically for this actor who wanted to do it, but we didn't have the budget to get this actor. So it was sort of a bit role part, and so we combined that scene and rewrote it in a way that had somebody else sort of fill that role. And the hardest part was really the scheduling more than anything else, was when different actors were available that we cast versus when certain things happened in the movie. So we really wanted, like Robert Craighead, who plays the sheriff, we really wanted him to play that role. And so, but his schedule conflicted with Chase's schedule. And so there were scenes where the two actors were in the same scene, but they couldn't be on set at the same time because of the scheduling conflict. And so we had to rewrite those scenes and change sort of the order of events in order to make it all work, really. And to me, it was more important to get the actors, because the actors we cast were all incredible. Like I would rather change, as a writer and as a director, I would rather change the scene and come up with some other cool alternative scene than try to recast the actors that I thought were right for the role.
Yeah. The other thing that I thought was perfect with this film was the right amount of horror and the right amount of fun, because I see a lot of movies where you watch it and you go, did they try to make that funny, or was that just really poorly executed? How difficult was that for you as a writer and director to get that right mix of comedy and horror into the film?
Yeah, I really appreciate that you think we got the right mix. For me, that's one of the things that going if I get a second chance to do a horror comedy ever, I will work even harder at, because to me that was one of the most difficult things in production. And at a certain point, we sort of just moved on from that. There was, to me, the film needs more horror. That's, if I was going to give a critique of my own movie, that was one of my main critiques, is that the horror elements were really hard to do. And for one reason or another, there's the way that, like, the suits were beautifully constructed, but they're big, right? And so some of the suits were big. And so how do you not show it, but also show enough that you get to see it, and so you actually get to see how beautiful the suits are. That was a challenge, especially given the locations that we had and the timing we had, because there was we had very little rehearsal time, and so even things like a lot of the little crabs are on wheels, like it's a remote control car with a crab over top of it,
yeah.
And so even getting the right movement of how the crab is supposed to move there was done on the fly at like 3 o'clock in the morning while we're trying to get shots as quickly as we possibly can. So there was a good amount of trial and error with what would work horror-wise, and given the limitation of what we had for our budget, like how do we get as much horror as we can given what we have. And the comedy element of it was far easier because the actors we cast were hilarious, and a lot of the best comedy bits were improv for me. I loved that we were able to. Initially, we didn't start doing improv. We started with following the script very closely, but then as we sort of all got more comfortable, everything loosened up, and we were able to. I was able to give the actors, like, here's the main gist of this scene. What's necessary in it. The characters. If you have somewhere else you'd like to go with it, let's try it. Let's go there. And I'd say nine times out of 10, it was better than what was in the script. So crafting the comedy beats with the actors in real time, I think, was really what added to what gave the movie its sort of comedic taste.
Definitely. You mentioned about before that you thought that the casting was spot on and you had some great actors in there, and I totally agree. Tell us a little bit about how you went about finding your actors and how you knew which actors were right for which part.
Yeah, so we had a casting agent, and it was during pre-production. The producer, I gave the script to the casting agent, and then the casting agent would send me different people reading the different auditions for different actors, and some of them Allie Jennings was the very first audition that I saw and knew she was right immediately. Same with Robert Craighead. I think he might be the only person who auditioned. I think he sent in his audition, and we were like, okay, we're done. We're casting him. Everyone else, there was a lot of auditions, and it was really just doing like a narrowing down and then watching one actor's audition with another actor's audition to try to see, because I would typically have them read the same. If they're in a scene with a character, I'd have them play one role and then have another actor audition with the other scene, so then I could sort of watch. They weren't in the same room, but I could get a decent sense of how they would at least play off of each other.
Yep.
It was challenging, but also one of my favorite parts of production was choosing the actors, because one casting choice can completely, totally shift the direction of the entire movie. And we actually had we had a different actor playing one of the roles, and he came on set, and we shot an entire day's worth of footage. And at the end of the day, the producers and I were like, "Uh-oh, this is not going as well as we thought. This is not really what we intended for the tone of the movie." And then terrible that happened to the actor, but he was out skateboarding and he broke his arm. So we had 24 hours to cast another actor for this role. And the very next day was one of the big emotional moments of the movie. And I had about 15 minutes to talk to the actor, and he came in and was perfect. It was like exactly what we needed. But even that, we had to cast on the fly. So it was a bit of luck, but also sort of, I knew the tone of the movie really well, what I was aiming for, and so I was really looking for actors that would embody that tone.
Yeah, and that certainly comes across. And the other thing that was perfect with the film too is the creature design. Tell us a little bit about that. You mentioned before that there were basic things like remote control cars used, but tell us a little bit about the creature design, and did they work out the way that you wanted them to work out?
Yeah, so Jim Ojala built all of the creatures, and he's a master. He's amazing. And this guy, Randall Kaplan, was the artist who I worked with to design what the creatures should look like, and then based on those specifications, Jim went off and he was the practical creature designer and actually built all the suits and all the costumes and everything. And so the original idea was there's one of the concepts I went through. I love going on DeviantArt and finding different designs and ideas for sets or costumes or feelings, moods. I love just looking at art to try to sort of help my creative juices flow. And so I was looking at all these different crab monsters and stuff like that. And the one that it's closest, that the arc is sort of closest resembles is Pokemon, is like Kabuto and Kabutops. And the problem with doing a design like that is that you need somebody to actually fit in a suit. And so we had the specifications for an actor that was going to play the role, and we had to get a suit that would actually be able to be worn by somebody for a period of time. And so that adds a level of sort of complexity to the actual design of the suit, because you need something to actually fit around a human body. And so Randall and I worked with that, and we did a whole lot of back and forth, like how do we keep it scary, but how do we also have it sort of look still like a horseshoe crab as everything progresses. I'm sort of all over the place with this answer, sorry.
That's all right.
But yes, we actually took horseshoe crab shells. So for the little monsters, we took horseshoe crab shells from a beach that had already molted, and then took clay and added some extra spikes and some creepy, like some stuff on the creepy spine, and then molded that. So the little horseshoe crabs are actually based on, they're slightly different, they're 10% different, but they're based on actual horseshoe crabs. And then we had puppets, and we had remote control crabs, and we had ones that we could fill with blue blood and then stomp on them and have the blood go all over the place. And then we had ones that were like rigged with a blood hose so that the blood go off to the sides of it, so it looked like it was eating somebody's face. And then we had 3 medium-sized suits, and then we retrofitted one of those for the thing that happens at the end, and then we had the other suit at the end of the movie. But so like in changing the script, one of the scenes we had to cut was a scene where the 3 medium-sized monsters, the 3 second-tier guys, were all in the scene together chasing the kids through the auditorium. But because of timing and budget, we had to cut that scene. So there's only one shot in the whole movie where you have 3 of the medium-sized suits, and that was something that, like, going back, there's a level of horror that I felt was missing because we couldn't get the three monsters working as a team against the humans in a way that I would have liked. But yeah, and we had to find people that were willing to wear 110-pound suits for 3 or 4 hours and be able to flexibly move, and so there's just in terms of complications, there's a scene at the end of the movie where one of the monsters has to pick this thing up, and the clod that it has to pick up is so heavy because there's rebar inside of it that we needed to connect. We had to basically strap it in to his suit and then figure out a way to actually move it like a sword. But we had to do that while we were filming, trying to figure out, okay, how do we get this thing to actually, how do we choreograph a sword fight when the choreography for the sword fight that we did was predicated on a one-handed holding the sword like a sword. Now we have to turn it into a two-handed battle axe that's really difficult to hold for any period of time. So every time we would do one swing, we'd then have to take a break and try it again, and then do another swing, then take a break. It was a lot of fun because it's getting to play make believe with giant toys, and it was also really challenging.
Well, mate, it ended up looking absolutely fantastic. I know we are right out of time, so I just want to say again, congratulations on such a fantastic film, and can't wait to be able to watch it again at Monsterfest.
Cool, man. Thank you so much.
No problem, mate. I'll let you go. Stay safe. We'll talk soon.